Hello, and welcome to the Big Yearning podcast, released alternate Mondays at 5 p.m. UK time. We are two life coaches who really enjoy meaningful conversations about big questions. Our work and our lives have been shaped by these questions, and they've taken us to some amazing places in our lives and in ourselves. We all long for things. We all carry big yearnings in our hearts. And over the next hour or so, we hope to touch on some of these feelings and perhaps give you ideas or insights to help you get clearer about what you long for and how to get it. Hello, welcome back to The Big Yearning, and if you're joining us for the first time, then welcome to the show. This is episode 16, and Happy New Year. We have kicked off 2021, and of course we're back in a lockdown in the UK, and we're back with the show. Today we're going to be covering the topic of visioning. We're going to be talking about what is a vision? Why do life coaches get so excited about it? Why is it so important to form one? What are the things that hold us back from being able to do that process? And then how do you work with it? How do you keep it alive? How do you keep it relevant? Do remember to follow us on social media if you're not doing that already. There's the Big Yearning page on Facebook, and there's a Big Yearning account on Instagram. And please do let other people know about this show. We really thrive off feedback from you guys. People tell me and Neil things that they've heard or that they would like to hear more of, or topics they'd like us to cover. And that's really what drives us and helps us decide what we're going to talk about. So please give us a follow on social, let your friends know about it, and do get in touch with us and let us know what you'd like us to talk about. Before we dive into today's topic, we're going to, as usual, have a quick check-in. This is where Neil and I just talk a little bit about ourselves. We just offer a little bit about how we're experiencing life right now, the things that are going through our minds, the things that we're feeling. Check-ins are a big part of both of our lives. Outside of this show, we have a regular personal check-in that we do a few times a week. It's us and another friend, and it's an opportunity just to kind of speak in a very raw, unfiltered way, be witnessed and feel that kind of depth of connection. It's a really amazing thing to do. So we do our check-in at the beginning of the show to rehearse a bit of that, to demonstrate a bit of that, and to just arrive fully in this moment so we can give you our best. So Neil, would you like to check in, mate?
Yes, thank you, Alexander. I feel good. I feel well. I can see your bright, shiny, smiley face. That's always something that puts a smile on my face too. I'm sat here in the room that I usually do the podcasts from, and I have a lovely view out onto some trees, and it always kind of grounds me. So if I ever have a little bit of performance anxiety around the podcast, I just look out and I see the trees, and it just kind of grounds me and I can breathe out. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here and in this first episode of the new year. I, like many other people, have woken up to the reality of, I think, the third lockdown in the UK. So just trying to kind of adjust myself to that. Questions around what is that asking of me? Is there anything I need to do differently? Anything I need to do in relation to friends, reach out? How does it impact on me in terms of looking after myself? How does it impact on my partner? So it's interesting, even though there's this phrase, we've been here before, to me, it feels important not to see it as the same thing every time. For me, it's always going to be qualitatively different for everyone. So, yeah, so that's where I am with the new lockdown. I feel really... me and you had a really lovely conversation this morning about this podcast, and just getting clear on being on the same page in terms of how we work together and how we do the podcast. And that was really, really great for me. So I'm really energized about this podcast. I think it's a really great topic. I'll say a little bit more in a moment about my relationship with visioning. The other thing that is uppermost for me is that in a week's time, I start a course in narrative coaching. It's a short introductory course run by a guy called David Drake, who is the who's a psychologist, who's the originator of narrative coaching. And I'm really looking forward to that. And one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to that is that I think I might have found a tribe. In this podcast, we've often talked about belonging. And in fairness, in my life, I have a number of kind of tribal affiliations, groups of people that I belong to. And in terms of my professional self and also my non-professional self, I feel like the narrative coaching folks could be a really great group of people to hook up with. So I'm really looking. So I hope I'm not going to be disappointed or let down. I'm kind of hyping it up a bit, but it's something I'm really, really looking forward to. So yeah, that happens next week. And otherwise, I am raring to go. How about you, Alexander? How are you?
Oh, thanks, Neil. I'm really excited to hear about that course. I hope it's really good. I'm all right. I've got to say that the news of the third lockdown has it's hit me, and it's certainly hit a lot of people that I know. I feel very interconnected with my friends right now, even though we're separated in different houses. We've got shared WhatsApp groups. We stay in touch a lot. I feel pretty worried about the lockdown. I'm aware how many people are struggling. I notice in myself that I'm having responses of I think I feel numb, I feel disconnected and worried, and there's a sense of powerlessness with this one for me. The first lockdown to me felt almost like a holiday, like a welcome change of pace. But now I've just been talking to clients and friends in the last couple of days, and people are talking about feeling worn down and tired and kind of raw to it all. I feel I'm used to working at my limit. I'm used to working really hard. I really enjoy working really hard. I've got memories running festivals and having to stay up all night looking after the volunteers and then working all through the day to run the festival and it feeling amazing. It's just the sense of incredible achievement at the end of that. We have the team has a massive hug and we did it. It's amazing, but it's hard work, and I'm used to that level of working at my limit. But this is a different kind of limit. This doesn't feel like that. There's something in me that just really wants to hug my friends and be with the people that I love and have a change of scenery. And I just think about being in a room or being on the beach with a whole bunch of friends and being held by them in that kind of shared group energetic way that just happens when there's a bit of banter going back and forth. Just real deep primal longing for all of that. Having a lot of conversations with people about resilience and perseverance. What can we learn about ourselves through this? I think I'm used to being the strong one for everybody in my life. I'm used to being sort of everyone's pillar. And I'm really having to learn to let people in, to let people support me, to do nice things for me. A friend who knew I was having a really hard day the other day just popped round randomly with cake. And it was just delightful. Really touching, and Christmas itself actually all came down to one friendship. I wasn't able to get down to Plymouth, like I said I was hoping to in the last episode, to see my family down there. At one point, it looked like I was going to be on my own for the whole Christmas period, and a friend of mine just went, "Nope, that ain't happening." And I spent Christmas with him, and it was really nice. It was one of the nicest Christmases I've had for a long time. So. Holding that weight, holding the tender moments with my close friends and my family when we're kind of looking out for each other, an eye to the future and not quite sure what it's going to be like, and feeling the pressure about that. And then the other thing that's up for me at the moment is that my book, Deep Joy, the PR for that really swings into action. It's going to be 6 months of very active work, just getting it out in the world. It's existed for about a year, but there are a lot of books, and making one book stand out from the crowd is a huge piece of work. So I've got, thankfully, a lot of professionals and some really great people starting to work on that. Got sent through a press release about that yesterday to review, and that just feels great. That feels like that feels hopeful. That feels open-ended. That feels like it's going somewhere. So feeling really good about that. And I think it's worth mentioning. Just hugely grateful for my life by the sea. The ability to just kind of sit by the waves, hear them lapping against the stones, and just be with nature in that kind of visceral way. I'm just really grateful for that. So, yeah, I think those things are how I am today.
Thank you, Alexander.
Okay, let's move on to our topic for today. Before we do that, I'm just going to mention that Neil and I have been talking quite a lot over the Christmas break around the podcast. We entered this creative relationship together in the first half of last year, and we've produced a whole bunch of episodes together. We're good friends. We've known each other for years. But as you will know, if you've done any kind of creative project with somebody you get to know them in a whole new way. You get to encounter yourself doing something unfamiliar and something challenging and something difficult, and you're doing that alongside someone else. And it requires a level of honesty and accountability with one another that's really challenging. It can bring up a lot of hard stuff, and it can be hugely rewarding. And we've had just lots of conversations about that in the last few weeks. We're talking about the things we agree on, the things we disagree on, the points of rubbing or conflict that might lie between us, the ways that we could use that to enhance our creativity. And how that's going to affect the podcast is we really want to break out of a mold that we made for ourselves last year. It feels a little bit too safe for us. It feels a bit too well-worn, and it feels a little bit too controlled. So a lot of last year, if you're a long-term listener of the podcast, you'll know that we tend to do this thing where we each bring 3 points on a topic, and then we deliver our points, and then maybe there's a little bit of back and forth, but that's kind of it. It's been a nice, safe format for us. This year, partially in response to feedback that I've had a number of times from a number of listeners, we're really going to try and drop that. We're going to continue having a focus for each episode, a little topic for us to explore and try and give you ideas and inspiration to try some of this stuff, to try shifting your life in some interesting way. But we're going to try and make it more conversational. We're going to try and make it less planned, more spontaneous. How this is going to go, we have no idea. But that's what we're going to have a go at this year. And I think I can speak wholeheartedly for Neil here that we're really glad you guys are with us, witnessing us on this little learning journey we're going through. And we really hope that by modelling this, by taking these risks, by playing around with different formats, we make this a more interesting, engaging experience for you guys. As ever, we want to hear from you. So what do you think of our new approach? What do you think we should take this? What should we talk about, and how should we talk about it? Please do let us know. Neil, is there anything you want to say about that?
I just want to echo wholeheartedly what you said, Alexander. Really echo strongly what you said about, me and you have had a friendship for many years, a strong friendship, and there's a different dynamic in terms of being work colleagues, and that's presented challenges. And I like to think that we're kind of rising to those challenges. It requires a lot of honesty, a lot of ownership of stuff, taking back projections, owning judgments, all of that kind of stuff. But then for me, the gold at the core of that is to come out the other side and one of the things is to take back judgments, take back projections, and the relationship strengthens. And I see you in a whole different light, and I pat myself on the back for owning my stuff and taking the steps to say, hey, this is what's going on for me. I don't want to give the listeners an impression that we're at each other's throats. We're certainly not.
No.
But it's a creative endeavor. There's a kind of dynamism to it. There's passions on either side. There's things we both feel really strongly about. And the final thing I want to say about this is that we were talking about this earlier on, about how my belief is that we live in a culture which perceives difference as being adversarial. So difference equals being right or wrong. That's the kind of matrix that we're kind of born into, I believe. So what I'm really interested in, I think, Alexander, what you're also interested in, is making difference complementary, dovetailing difference, different points of view that mutually nourish and nurture. So that's been one of my really strong learning points around this, that to move away from this cultural mindset of difference equals a binary adversarialness or right and wrongness. It doesn't have to be like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of my favourite YouTube channels is called Midlife Crisis, and it's a doctor who just talks about his experience as a doctor, and it's been invaluable for the last year through the COVID stuff. And he was saying that if there's a word that he hopes becomes more of a thing in 2021, it's uncertainty. Because we need to become better at the fuzziness in between right and wrong and your side and my side, and just get better at that interchange and complementariness.
Definitely. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, let's press on with today's topic. So if you ever go and see a life coach, or if you pick up a book on personal development, or if you just decide you want to start improving your life in a kind of focused way, sooner or later you're going to run into the idea of visioning. This is some kind of connecting where you are now with where you want to be, and it's some kind of idea about getting clear about where you want to be. So that's what we're talking about today. It feels kind of a good time to be doing this at the beginning of a new year, especially a year that's begun in such a challenging way for so many people. Let's try and work out where we're going. What we're going to do today is we've got these kind of broad areas we're going to talk about. What is a vision? What's the value of a vision? What gets in the way of forming one? And how to keep it alive. And so we're going to begin with what is a vision? Neil, you're our guy for defining stuff. So
am I? Great.
You are.
Okay,
you're always like, here's my
Alexander.
definition. I went and looked up a definition. It's great. You always cut straight to what do we actually mean by this?
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Well, my take on what a vision is, this is what it is. I see visioning as a way of allowing yourself to have your own unique desires and wishes and make them manifest, make them come true. So that involves creating an image of the life that you want. And there's a clue here in the word of visioning. So vision, for me, it's about an image. It's about creating something an image which is very visceral, detailed, vivid, colourful, very alive, which you create for yourself as an imaginative and creative exercise, which you can then kind of internalize, I guess, to a degree where you can access it readily and you can match it against your day-to-day experience in terms of being the person that you want to be or getting the things that you want to get in your life. And part of that is that for me that feelings are important in that the vision has to generate within you feelings that you want, positive feelings of excitement or curiosity or some positive feelings generally that you want to experience. Visioning is not a paper exercise in as much as it's not something you do one day and you put it on the shelf never to look at it again. I see visioning as a very active work in progress thing. And for me, a vision is rooted in values and aligned with a clear intention. And I'll say more about those a bit later on. So I don't have a copybook definition of what a vision is. I do have an out of a book definition for something later on to fulfill your need for Neil being the definition guru. But
yeah,
okay.
You're my definition guru.
So that's my take on what a vision is for me, Alexander. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of the very similar things in my notes here. Little notes I've written to myself. It's a clear picture about where you want to be going in your life. For me, it lies somewhere between a dream and a plan. So if a dream is lying awake, falling asleep at night, and you're just beginning to wonder about, wouldn't it be nice if, and you see yourself on a holiday somewhere, or you see yourself with somebody doing a thing, and wouldn't that be nice? Those are dreams. They're very unformed, and they'll blow away in the wind, and you may well forget them. A plan is I'm going to go here at this time, do this thing. This is how I'm going to measure whether I manage to do the thing or not. Smart goals, all this sort of very tethered stuff. Somewhere in between there is a vision. So a vision is more concrete than a dream. It's something, yes, I absolutely agree that it's a visual thing, hence vision, but I also encourage people to think in terms of other senses. So when you're looking at a scene that you in this beautiful future that you've made, what can you hear? What can you smell? What tactile sensations are you having?
Yeah.
What is it really like to be there? Make it as real and as visceral as you can.
Yeah.
And I think I also think of a vision as a tether between now and then. So it's drawing this line through your life that says, I was a place, now I am a place, and I will be in a place. So it gives this sense of sort of directedness and flow into the future. And it says that where I am now is not where I'm always going to be, because that's where I'm going to be. That place over there, that other location, that other feeling, that other situation, those possibilities that exist for me then, all of that is coming, and there is a link between now and that time. So that's another important kind of thing for me with visioning. Yeah, does that all resonate with you, Neil?
Yeah, thank you for filling in the bit about it being more than just a visual sense of things. That's something I sort of noted down later. You're right. So, in a vision, imagine you're in a situation. What is it that you can hear? What is it that you can touch? What is it that you can smell? What are the kind of sensations in your body like? All of that is in the service, as you say, of making it very real and tangible and kind of accessible and unique to you, because your vision will be utterly unique to you if you kind of think about it and envision it in terms of all those different senses and feelings and experiences that you want to have. So so that's good. I'm really interested in and really pleased that you mentioned. I think you've summed it. You articulated this really lovely. You said it's somewhere between a dream and a plan, because one of the questions I was going to ask you was, you have your 5-year plan, which you've spoken about, and you've sent me. So I was going to ask you. I mean, you may have already answered the question, but so it's kind of different. It's different from a plan. It's some kind of halfway between a kind of dream and a plan.
Yeah, the plan came later. It began with a cloud of Post-it notes on the wall, which each of them had a feeling, and each of them was a scene or a scenario or a quality that I know I needed in my future. I think needs is a really important word to bear in mind in visioning. What do I need in my life? Like, what needs in my life are not being met, which are being met right now, and I want really to hold on to those things. And then so there was this multicolored swathe of Post-it notes on my wall, which sum things up, and I kind of put loose timescales to them just to kind of give it that reality.
Yeah.
And it was from that the plan came. So once I knew how I needed it to feel, how I needed it to be, what it was going to be like, what the scenes were going to be like, what scenarios was I playing out, what had changed, what was different in that time than now, then I was able to go, right, I need to do this. There's a really clear, challenging milestone that I need to smash through in order to reach that thing, because until I've done this, I won't reach that place. Mm-hmm. That then informed the plan. That's what became the plan. So yeah, it's that drawing back from. It's almost like you're sort of downloading from imagination. You begin with airy fairy, wafty dreams that are lovely but totally tenuous. And then it becomes a bit more real into your vision, and then you finally start putting some flags in the ground, and you say, that's a plan.
Great, lovely, brilliant, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. That's what we mean by the word vision. Next thing we're going to come on to is, what's the point of it? What's the value of a vision? What does it do for you? It will take hard work to get yourself a vision. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that tend to get in the way of making a vision. So why would you do all this hard work? Why would you invest energy and time and emotional risk and vulnerability into making yourself a vision? What's the value of it? Neil, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Okay, so just a little tiny bit of a backstory here. I had always been aware of visioning as a personal development tool for a number of years, but it's only a couple of years ago that I did my first own vision. I call it Neil's Big Vision. I didn't want to go small, it's Neil's Big Vision. And I'm indebted to a small coaching book by a woman called Megan Jo Wilson, American Coach. Lovely little book, which I think I've mentioned before, called Who the F Am I to Be a Coach?
Yeah, you have.
Yes. Yeah. And I was flicking through the pages of this book, and I got onto the section about visioning, and she said that visioning was probably one of the most powerful tools that she had used in her life, not just professionally, but personally as well, to orientate her to her desires, to her wishes, to her wants. And she said that with visions that she'd written even, say, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, she would keep referring back to them to look at the kind of progress that she had made and gauge where she was in her life. So again, for me, that was really useful in that a vision isn't just a one-off, and I bet you keep all your Post-it notes, for example, so so you can track the course of your development, sort of thing. So reading her book kind of spurred me on, and so I wrote my big vision. And I'd never written one before. One of the reasons I'd never written one before was because I didn't have the self-belief that I could make my dreams come true. And as I did more work on myself and developed and grew, I hope, I started to believe, well, actually, I can have what I want. I can aim towards that at the very least. I can do myself the service of going for what I want. So that was a significant change which had to occur. And then so I wrote my big vision, and the purpose it had for me, Alexander, or what it serves to do, is that primarily it keeps me connected with my desires. And it's something that you can constantly match against your daily experience to see if you're on track with who you want to be and what you want in your life. I think I said that before in the introduction, but it's a very kind of practical tool. It's like something that I can kind of access every day. So it has this capacity, I think, a good vision to, if I wake up in the morning, I can instantly tune into a vision, my own vision. I can imagine that, and I can think, okay, how does that match against the day that I want to create for myself? And I might not always hit the marks that I want to, but it's always there as a kind of stake in the ground, as a kind of reference point. So that's one clear function it performs for me, a reference point, a stake in the ground, something that I can rely on.
So how often do you feel you refer back to it? Is it an everyday thing?
I think in some ways it is, I think I may not be aware that I'm doing it consciously, but I think if I were to drill down in terms of my thoughts and my actions throughout a day, I think I do in my being relate to it and refer to it each day. Simple example might be one of the things in my big vision was regular walking, and me and my partner, we do that. So I'm out walking and I think, right, here I am. I'm living the life that I want to live. There's this lovely saying by Annie Dillard. She says, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. So something for me that really relates to having a vision and keeping it very close to home, immediate, accessible. So I think, yes, really great question, lovely question. I think I do manage to kind of refer to it each day in some shape or form, and then I can feel good about myself, and I can pat myself on the back and I think, right, okay, well done, Neil. I'm doing all right today. I'm on track. I'm online. Do you know what I mean? And that's very that's many things. It's certainly one of the words that comes up. It's very comforting. It's very reassuring. It's happifying. The last thing I just wanted to say on this in terms of the value of a vision was, for me, it can be both compass and destination. It can be both journey and destination. So it's something which is an endpoint in and of itself. So then you might vision about moving home or getting a job or having certain relationships in your life. And at the same time, it's important as the process as well, the journey, the stepping stones along the way. And I'll say a little bit about that later in terms of, what it's like maybe to tune into or more accurately be open to the journey aspect as much as the destination aspect. So, that's for me the kind of value of visioning.
Nice. I mean, one of the things that I kind of wanted to ask you there but it might be more appropriate to talk about it later, is, you said that when you came, or the reason you hadn't done a vision for a long time is because we weren't really sure if you could make a life that you wanted.
Yeah.
And then at some point you decided you could.
Yeah.
And I wondered was it a chicken and the egg sort of thing? Like there was a project of doing a vision, and there was the choice to believe that you could make the life that you wanted. Did the vision kickstart the belief, or did the belief have to come first?
Really great question. I think intuitively right now, I think the belief had to come first for me. I think with these kinds of questions, these kind of scenarios, I think ultimately in reality, there's a little bit of both kind of going on concurrently at the same time. But I think the majority emphasis was on I needed to develop the belief that I could at the very least aim for something, or even that I deserved something. So kind of self-esteem kind of comes in here as well. So negative questions can pop around in me, like, who am I to go for what I want? So once I'd done the personal development work around that, which is related to kind of belief that I could have what I wanted, I could at the very least go for what I want, then I could I could approach a visioning endeavor or task or project with integrity and consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Makes sense. I sort of feel like, no. The impression I got was that you were kind of kick-started into this by the coaching training that you did. Like it brought up a lot of this stuff and kind of brought it into your kind of brought it front and center for you. And that a lot of speed reflection and speed kind of
speed reflection, like it,
in a really short period of time.
Yeah. No, I mean, the coaching training was a lot of speed reflection, and when I started the coaching training, I thought, okay, this is going to be a big change in my working life. But then also, I very quickly learned it's going to be a big change in my whole life, and I have to kind of walk my talk. So like if I'm going to be working with clients and people who want to make dreams come true, who want to change their lives around, then I owe it to them to be in integrity with myself in terms of, I'm trying to do that too. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. So that became kind of blindingly obvious, actually, very quickly. So yes, speed reflection. I like the phrase speed reflection. There was a lot of speed reflection. Great, thank you.
So some of the stuff that I have reflected on about the value for a vision, I feel like the main value of a vision in the way that I approach it is alignment. So I've talked a number of times in this podcast about this sort of 4 directions, 4 aspects model that I work with about the human person, emotion, mind, body and spirit. And for me, the point of the vision and the point of investing time and energy and coming back to it regularly and making sure that it feels alive and vital and real for you is that all 4 aspects of us end up being aligned in one direction. So if we're emotionally invested where we're going, we end up making split-second decisions, or we end up making gut decisions, gut reactions. We end up feeling our way towards something. So our emotions are kind of propelling us, and our emotions make, I think, the vast majority of our decisions. So if our feelings are attached to this place we're going, we'll just end up making better choices that take us in that direction. If our minds are focused on it, we tend to be more creative, and we tend to be able to plan and structure things, and we tend to be able to go, okay, well, if I need that, then a bit like my 5-year plan. If I want this vision to happen, I'm going to need this stuff to happen first. There's a physical preparedness thing. Do you physically need to move? Do you physically need to be fitter and stronger, or a different shape, or a different sort of fitness level? It's the literal movement towards your vision. And then with the spiritual stuff, it's about intention. It's about allowing the more than human to support our direction and our intention and the places we want to go. Whether or not you have any kind of belief in that, whether or not that feels relevant for you, there is something about that kind of subtle background assumption that you are going somewhere, that I am heading in this direction. It just allows things around us, whether it's the choices of other people or whether it is the more than human, that just aligns with that and supports us. I have a Rumi poem that's printed up in my at my working desk, and it begins with, "You must ask for what you really want." There's something about saying to the world, "This is where I want. This is where my heart longs to be." And there can be a really powerful alignment behind that. So I think that total all-person alignment, the fact that you might tell some of your friends about it, so your friends are aligned as well. You'll tell your partner or your children or whoever about it. So everything around you ends up being kind of shaped in the direction you want to go. For me, that's one of the main values of a vision. And I think the other one is kind of what you were talking about, Neil. It really propels and supports and encourages personal development in itself. It becomes this kind of interplay of, who am I to imagine where I'm going? Do I have the confidence and the self-esteem to believe that I can make something of myself, to make my life different? Well, here are some things that I want, and here are some things that I need. I'm going to need to step up. Oh, now I find myself stepping up. Now I'm more capable. Now I can vision more. Now things become more real to me. And it becomes this iterative back and forth thing between these two kind of aspects. I feel it strengthens us and it strengthens our identity. We get clearer about what we want. I mean, how many people can tell you what they want? You know, if you sit down with someone and goes, "Hey, what do you really want out of life? Where are you going?" They'll go, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I mean, it's hard work.
Yeah.
And it's scary work to go, this is what I want. It's putting a flag in the ground. It is, it's closing off other possibilities. You know, it's a whole piece of work to be able to just say what you want. But if you begin with the things you do feel and the things that you can start with, they become kind of those nebulous bits, those bits that form the start of your vision. And then it becomes this back and forth interplay between your self-esteem and clarity of vision and understanding yourself and your needs and your desires and your longings. And then things unpack and you realize there was this whole side of you that needed nourishing all along. And that comes back to your vision. And then it builds in this quite magical way over time. So I think for me, that's the other bit about the vision. It becomes a creative project in itself.
Yeah, lovely. When you were speaking there, there's a couple of things I'd like to respond to. You know, that last bit you spoke about in terms of, you know, what do I really want? What does someone really want in their lives? And I think that a vision is a lovely tool for that because it starts off very close to home, close to heart. It can be very private initially. And as the visioner, you can choose about how much to share, how much to go public. So with the question of what do you really want, which can, I agree with you, Alexander, be very scary. You can address that question through a vision by, you know, creative imagining. You can be uncensored. It's an internal process initially, for me, around letting your imagination free and letting yourself, you know, like coming back to what you said halfway between a dream and a plan. So it's kind of like what I take from what you're saying in that is that it kind of starts with a dream and then it becomes, you know, more kind of formed. So, yeah, for me, it's a really lovely tool because you can choose the kind of pace of it. You can choose the detail of it. And you can choose, really importantly for me, when it's right to kind of share it with other people, as I believe it inevitably has to be done, because a vision is about making something manifest and tangible in a person's life in the world. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. So it's lovely that you asked that question. And then the piece that you said about alignment, again, really good. It made me think of, I sort of talk about alignment a bit later on, and I talk about the interplay of intention and values. And I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now because it speaks directly to, I think it relates to what you were just saying, this almost state of priming. So there's a quote from a guy called Dan Siegel, who I've been aware of for a while, many years ago when I was nursing and really into attachment theory. Dan Siegel is an American psychiatrist and psychologist who's done a lot of work around attachment and neuroscience. And he wrote a book called The Mindful Brain. And he talks about creating a clear intention and what that creates in relation to vision. And that creates what he says is an integrated state of priming, a gearing up of our neural system to be in the mode of that specific intention. We can be readying to receive, to sense, to focus, to behave in a certain manner. And I think that's great. Now, on this podcast, just to say to the listeners, we don't go into a lot of academic stuff generally. I personally tend to be a bit selective about what stuff I'll quote. But for me, there's so much in that. And what I really like about that is that we're looking at this thing called visioning. And here's a neuroscience researcher saying, actually, this has a kind of very definite base in our brain structuring, in our brain anatomy, in our neural pathways. So there's this. So for me, that makes it really even more grounded and tangible and accessible. And at core, what he's talking about, and maybe this is what we're talking about in a lot of coaching and personal change anyway, is developing more neural pathways. Different neural pathways. Yep. But what I really love about his quote is about this this state of priming, and it relates to what you said, I think, about you're in alignment, those four aspects of the human that you work with. Everything has to be lined up so that your whole being is primed to respond and kind of primed to receive. So like you were saying about the spiritual element of it, the element of the divine, the element of, like, for me, putting some faith that the world will respond to you in a way that is useful, that is functional, that will give you something at least to kind of latch on to. So yeah, I think that's a great quote. So yeah,
it's interesting while you're talking. Last year I read a book called Peak Performance, and it's an amazing little book. It's just really interesting parallels between sort of top athletes and sports people and chess players and business people and top of their game people, and what do they have in common, and things about periodization, things about mindfulness. And reading that, I was initially a little bit challenged personally, because I've written a book which is all about how do you practically go about doing stuff. And I don't really quote a lot of evidence in it, because it's more about how do you make sense of stuff and how do you practically put stuff into action. It's not really about proving that something is true or not. But I think one of the really interesting things was that as I read Peak Performance and as I noticed this extremely evidence-led, scientific research-led book was coming to all the same conclusions. And it is just really interesting when those sort of things come full circle. So that is interesting. And just coming back also to this idea about when do you share your vision, I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
At what point do you share stuff? I mean, as I've said before, I'm really big into the weightlifting stuff. I spend a lot of my life, well, not right now because of lockdown, but a lot of my life normally in the gym. And I love the physical embodied challenge of deadlifting and lifting heavy weights. And there's a meme that goes around within those circles, which goes something like, set your goals, smash them, clap for your own damn self. And it's all about that very potent, strong, embodied, sort of traditionally masculine, do it all yourself type approach. And I think that's got its place. I think that's, it's useful for a certain kind of situation. But I also feel like we can do better than that. Because if you do that alone, if you just have your vision, keep it quietly to yourself, smash your goals, and then get there and feel good about yourself, you didn't take anyone with you. You didn't foster belonging, you didn't foster connection, you didn't collaboratively work with others, you didn't get that creative challenge that you and I have, through doing this podcast and the conversations that come up through doing that. And I think we miss out on a lot if we keep our vision entirely to ourselves. But at the same time, if you share it too early, you can lose some of the creative juices. Something can kind of get lost as you're sharing it and trying to put it into words and trying to make it make sense to somebody else. It can put a real lid on your willingness to take risks in your private, quiet vision. So the question about when we share that is really interesting. And who do we share it with first? Who do we risk opening up to? How do we frame it? What language do we find for that? I think that's really, really interesting stuff. Probably beyond the scope of this episode, but it's really interesting.
I think the last thing I'd like to say on that, I think it may well be beyond the scope, it's just a short sentence, is that for me, this whole question of when to share something that is really important or value in terms of personal development, self-development, for me, that's an ongoing theme. That happens for me, in all of my growth and development. There is this question all the time of when do I share something? When do I go public? Because in the very early stages of something new being born, it's very fragile.
Yeah,
exactly. And like you've alluded to, it can just be knocked off course. It can be obliterated even. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in taking time to share and being really judicious about who you share with. Be very conscious of who you're sharing things with. In the very first stages, I would recommend go to people who you know that will give you a good hearing, not yes people who will give you constructive feedback, but on the whole are rooting for you and are supportive. And then once you've consolidated that, then you can take, a new aspect of yourself, whether it's a vision or something else, to more challenging circles where you might be challenged, where someone might disagree with you. So for me, I just wanted to say that for me, it's really important, I think.
Okay, let's come on to the second of the three areas we're going to look at today. Let's talk, we've already covered this a little bit, let's talk about what stops us from doing this work, what stops us from forming a vision, what stops us attempting to create a vision, what stops us from following it through to completion. I might kick us off this time, Neil, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure, go for it. Yeah.
So I get to work with the stuff a lot. I get to sit with clients while they are beginning to do their vision or at different stages of doing it. I have been through some really challenging stuff personally with all this. So I think a few of the things that get in the way. I mean, fear is a big thing here. The fear of failure, which is I set myself these big goals and then I fall short of them, and then I have to cope with that, the knowledge that I didn't get there. And I think that fear, especially if it's allowed to be unconscious and unreflected, and it just kind of festers at the back of the mind, is very paralyzing. So I really feel like the fear of failure is one of those ones that's quite that we can work with really quite strongly if you can make it conscious, if you can bring it into the fore of your consciousness and go, yeah, I have a fear of failing here. If we're also able to hold the idea that failure is just information, which is the ideal kind of point with that, the knowledge that if you are taking a good running jump at this vision that you've got and you fall short, you can get up and you can take another jump. That's not it. That's not the end of the game. There's the fear of disappointment, I think, is a really big one as well. What if I get there and it's crap? Or what if I discover that I'm not the right person to do this? What if I'm not strong enough to do this? What if I'm not smart enough? What if I just don't have the skills? What if I'm just a failure? I'm just a bad sort of person. There's something intrinsically wrong with me. And it all gets exposed by trying. I've got my vision. I write it down. I set myself actual, tangible things to head for. And then I tell other people in my life about it. I tell my partner and I tell my family and I tell my close friends, this is what I'm going for. And then I can't do it. I just discover that there's something wrong with me. I'm useless. I'm rubbish. And then now this is all stuff that goes on in the head. I've never really seen someone discover that they are these awful things and then that's the end of the story. That's usually a really interesting and useful and important step in the stuff we overcome on the way to our vision. But that fear, again, sits at the back of the head and says, but I don't want to be exposed as these things. I don't know if I can do this, and I think I might not be a person who can do a vision. So I'm just not gonna. I'm just gonna pack it away and not do that stuff. I mean, what does it say about us if we fall short? I think there's a lot of stuff there about the exposure and the the self-fulfilling prophecy kind of stuff around if I set myself a hard goal and then I fall short, look, there you go, I knew I couldn't do it. That stuff that really can be paralyzing. I think that a passive mindset is a really common thing. I talk about this in my book as one of the core toxic stories of our culture. Just be somebody who passively follows along, does the right things, do school, you do university, you go and get a job, you work your way up the job, at some point you'll retire, along the way you'll do holidays and you'll do weekends, and that is what your life is. And I think people can fall into the trap of believing that they are a passive person. I've never met a passive person, really. I think that we're all wild and free and highly creative beings. And but I think that head down, just treading the path kind of mentality is, I mean, why would you vision? You would never even think about it. You know where you're going. It's the path. So I think that kind of passive mentality can be a real problem as well. There's a few more things I want to say, but Neil, I can see you smiling at stuff I'm saying. So is there anything you want to add in there?
I'm smiling at the last bit you said, like Alexander, particularly, and I think this is a real resource. You were mentioning about that toxic story of passivity that you write about in your book. And then you said your belief is that we're all wild and free. And that made me think again about the nature of visioning. In your visioning, you are accessing your imagination, and your imagination is wild and free. Yes, your imagination, because it's part of your cognitive makeup, has been influenced by family, by culture, by friends, by history, all of that stuff. But actually, for me, nobody owns your imagination, so it is free and creative in that way. And if you can tune into that kind of ethic, that belief even, then it's really amazing what you can envision for yourself. So I was smiling particularly at that bit, because I think there's something really true there, that the imagination, yes, it's influenced by many social factors, but ultimately it's free. No one can get inside your brain and stop you thinking certain things. Yeah, no one can do that. So yeah, I was smiling at that, really. So for me, barriers to forming a vision are lack of clarity about what you want. So you've just spoken of, we've spoken about this already today, and it's kind of like, it reminds me of like, yeah, how do you know what you want? How do you really know what you want? So, and again, just at that very basic but critical step and stage, again, I think the imagination can be incredibly important. You can imagine certain scenarios. You can imagine yourself in you can create a vision of a workplace that you would like to work in. You can think, okay, once I step in the door of my workplace, how do I want it to be? Do I want to receive a cup of coffee from a friend? A friend and colleague? Do I want to go straight into a meeting? Do I want to chill out a bit first? Do I want to meet with my manager? What's the lighting like in the office? Does it have plants? Are people wearing collar and tie? Are they, so you can, again, back to this sense of what you were saying about a vision is a full and total sense-orientated phenomenon. Yeah. So just by doing that, you can actually tune into what is it you want, because you can match that vision against how it feels to be living and working in a place like that and existing in a place like that. So yeah, so that's more about clarity about what you want. So once you've kind of gone through a process of kind of getting somewhere close to what you want, for me, it's really important to bring some definition to that. So, for example, I'll talk about my own big vision here. So when I did my big vision, it was very much about work-life balance. So it included aspects of work, relationship, friendships, family, recreation, health, fitness, well-being. So I deliberately chose that, and that was conscious. But someone else's vision doesn't have to be about all of that. You might choose to create a vision around work. You might choose to create a vision around health and well-being. It's just about being clear exactly what you're doing and not to get kind of muddied. So that's one thing that I think can get in the way, lack of clarity. And then kind of related to that, I think another barrier is leaving things out of your vision that might actually impinge on your chosen vision. So you might do some visioning, for example, around wanting to change job, to get different work. But there's something in your personal life which will really impinge on that, and you're not addressing that. So it would be no surprise if your vision kind of collapses a bit because you're not addressing something else which impinges on it, even though you think you've kind of separated the two spheres. So that's one thing. And then the last thing for me is, as a barrier, is holding it a bit too tightly. So again, coming back to this lovely thing that you said about a vision is kind of halfway between a dream and planning. It's not something, a vision isn't something I want to get obsessed about. It's something that I want to inspire me. It's something that I want to enliven me and be creative around. So there has to be some kind of creative flexibility. And I'll just throw something in here, and I spoke to you about this earlier on, in terms of flexibility. So if we take the example of me wanting, or someone wanting to vision an open space, a green space. Someone might want a garden. They don't have access to a garden at the moment. And then as they've created this vision, they're imagining it, they're in touch with that desire and that intention each day. And then they bump into a friend and they say, hey, there's a free allotment going on my allotment plot. Would you like to take it? Now, for me, that's about having an open and creative kind of flexibility. An allotment isn't a garden, but an allotment may kind of tick certain boxes that a garden might offer. So again, I think it references back to what you were saying, Alexander, about, and what Dan Siegel was talking about in terms of being readying to receive, to be open to what might come. So something a little bit different from what you're envisioning might come, but it might not be totally unrelated. It might be something that is a place where you want to stop and you're very happy with that, or it might be a stepping stone onto the garden in this example. So just to sum that up, the barrier for me could be about holding it too tightly and not allowing enough kind of creativity or creative flexibility, shall I say.
That's really interesting, and it's a really good reminder, because I think I have this slightly bullish approach to things, and I think I do, I talk about determination in my book, and I have this sort of like, right, it's gonna bloody make this happen now. I am focused, I am going for it. Mm-hmm. And I think I have this tendency to treat visions as I encourage my clients to get obsessed with their visions.
Okay.
To get really, really, really attached to them and get really, really focused on them.
Just a quick apology to all your clients then there for me saying not to get obsessed.
Well, like we were saying earlier, I think this is one of those areas that's not an either or.
Yeah.
I don't think it's either be flexible and playful with your vision, or be bullish and determined and utterly focused on your vision and unwilling to compromise.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, maybe there are some visions which are things you're not willing to be flexible on. If there's a job that I want and that's the job that I'm absolutely aligned towards it and I'm focused on it, and another job that's quite similar that ticks some of the boxes comes along, I might decide to turn that down because I'm obsessed and fixated on this vision, and maybe that's a good thing sometimes. And then we have to live our lives, as you were saying earlier, this is our lives happening right now, and the vision is as much the journey as it is the destination. And if we can't be playful with it, and if we can't say, actually, that allotment fulfills a lot of the needs that I wanted in a garden. What I wanted from a garden was some green space, and for it to be a place I could be creative, a place I can grow things, perhaps a place where I can grow vegetables and have that connection and that experience. Perhaps it was a place where I can just relax in the green. well, I can get all of that from an allotment. So actually, my vision was the needs, and it was manifested through this garden.
Yes.
But if I go deeper than just the vision that I had into the needs that were pulling me there, into the longings that were propelling me, then the allotment ticks every box. So I suppose that's an important thing to bear in mind with this stuff. Because you're right, stuff will come up. And I feel like that's a really regular challenge that we're going to encounter if we try to live this directed, intentional life, is that stuff will come along, and sometimes it'll be stuff that knocks us flat and we have to learn to get up again, and sometimes it'll be tempting things that say, what about this? What this slightly different thing, this thing that could be wrapped up to look like the vision that you had? And then there's a choice to make there. Does this tick the boxes, fulfill the needs, or is this taking me off course?
I think at the end of the day, it's only the person with the vision that will know that. Does it tick enough boxes? Is it closely aligned enough with what I want? So, I mean, it's really helpful what you said there, because you say you can have a tendency to be being a bit bullish, and you write in your book about determination. I can go to the other pole, if you like, and I can sometimes be too loose, too vague, not kind of targeted enough. So I think, like you say, it is a blend. It's a kind of both and thing. And what I think is really important in what you said there, Alexander, is about coming back to needs. So, yeah, does this thing that, using the example of allotment, and again, what are the needs that underlie the vision? Is there something about growing vegetables? I can do both of those. Yes, it ticks that box. Can I have a workshop or a shed on my allotment? Oh no, I can't. Okay, so that's a box that isn't ticked, for example. So the needs bit I think is really important.
Okay, so I just want to wrap up this section about what stops us forming a vision with just a couple of words to people who might be listening who quite like this idea of beginning to work on their own personal vision, but there are these barriers, there are these fears or these other things that are getting in the way. I just want to invite you to feel the fear and do this stuff anyway. And the question, I guess, is, do you want to live the way you're living now forever? Life is short, and when we look back, it can be a heartbreaking thing to know that you didn't take the chances that you were offered. That is, I've said before, it is the hardest single thing that I ever have to do as a coach, is I have to sit with my client when they blink and they look at me and they say, I wish I'd done this 20 years ago. And it's a really regular thing. And it's heartbreaking every time because, yes, you could have done, and maybe you should have done. And all we can do now is make those choices now and do those dangerous things now and vision those things and take those risks and step out of those comfort zones now. Because, yes, you could have done it 20 years ago. So if you are kind of tempted by this stuff, but the stuff that's holding you back, then please do dive into it, because I don't want to be having that conversation with you in 20 years' time where you tell me you could have done it then. Just go for it.
Lovely. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's go on to our third and final part. We're going to quickly rattle through how to keep a vision alive once you've got one. Neil, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I think actually in this new way of doing the podcast where we have more discussions, I think I've covered an awful lot of this actually. There's one or two little new bits, but I think I would really just like to reiterate in this part that, values are really important. I see the whole visioning process as starting with values, what's important to me. So, one of my values, really strong values, is around connection. So I'm not going to kind of set up a vision which has nothing to do with connection. So again, values are a real kind of stake in the ground. And then once you're clear about what your values are, and also just to say this, if you do an internet search, for example, if you're not clear what your values are, it's a great little exercise to delve into. If you were to do an internet search on values list, you'll get some worksheets, a whole list of words of values, choose your top 5, choose your top 10. It's something that I've done in the past and have done it again very recently. It's incredibly helpful because it helps to orientate me to my vision. That's what underpins it all. And I think values very kind of closely related with needs. That's probably not space and time to kind of go into that here and now, but I start with values, and then, line it up with your intention and let that kind of creativity of your imagination flow. And I know I've said this already, but just to reiterate, it's something that you can access daily. So again, a very visceral, vivid, sensual imagining of what you want, something that you can tune into each day. The other thing is the kind of new thing I'd like to say is, or additional thing I'd like to say is, notice what is already manifesting in your life, what you already have now. Now, from the solution-focused school, the solution-focused theorists, they work quite a lot with this. So if you want something, they will probably ask you, what of that nature is already in your life at the moment? And you might be surprised. So again, if we just run with this example of I'd really like a garden, what access to friends' gardens do you already have? What house plants do you have? I mean, it may sound a bit facile, but it's not really. It's all kind of helping you to think what is already in my life? And then you can bring in more of that stuff. There's actual active things that you can do to make your vision more real day by day. Although probably the last thing I want to say is be really creative in the visioning itself. So we've talked a bit about this, but talk with your friends about it judiciously, to those who think will give you a good and supportive hearing. Draw it, write it down, journal about it, engage in some sort of physical actions around it. Imagine stepping into the scene, wake up each morning and spend 5 minutes and, take a step forward into a space, close your eyes, imagine you in that future life. I think all of that stuff is really, really important.
I've just got a list of techniques and approaches, really. Once you've got your vision and you're starting to move towards it, then make it visible somewhere at home. People who come and visit me sometimes laugh at the number of words that I have on the wall. I have charts and post-it notes and lists of things and affirmations and all sorts of things. I run a regular laptop club for friends who are just kind of stuck working at home on their own, and a friend brings his corgi puppy. And one of my friends was recently reading over my shoulder, reading my sort of core affirmations out loud, and it felt a little bit exposing, but it was great, and he was quite inspired by it. So there's something about just keep it out, keep it somewhere you'll see it regularly.
Yeah.
Make them words. Some people do vision boards, and a vision board is where you just print or cut out pictures that capture some aspect of your vision, and you put them all together like a collage or a pin board, and you put that somewhere you'll see it regularly. And the words might be in there, or just pictures or drawings you've done, or anything that sort of brings you into that sensation of your vision. See if you can find some allies that you can share these kind of secret dreams with. Make them allies you can trust, but people who you can share it with as if you're plotting together. Audio recordings can be great. Neil, this is one that you taught me when I came to visit you that time and you played me your vision. Neil had written it out and then read it into a recorder, and then he played it back to me, and it was very beautiful to hear this place that he was going. Have core affirmations that remind you where it is you're going and what it's going to be like when you get there, and perhaps some of the ways you need to challenge yourself in order to become that person. And I think the last thing I want to say about keeping your vision alive is that just accept that it's going to take time. It's not. If this was easy, you would have done it by now.
Yes.
So it's going to take time. It's going to take hard work, and you're going to get knocked down. And really, one of the main skills you need to master is around resilience and the art of getting back up again. I think that a lot of people think that the hard thing is initiating the journey, but that's not the hard thing. The hard thing is once you're moving and you're grossly disappointed by something, or a massive challenge comes along and takes all of your energy and all of your focus, and you forget about your vision for months at a time, then coming back to it and having to get up and begin again, that is the hard thing, in my experience. And it's probably one of the most important skills that we'll ever master in life, is the art of getting back up again. So just allow that to be part of your journey. You will need that skill. if you're going to make your vision happen. Your vision will not happen without accident and challenge and distraction and temptation. You are going to be knocked off course. So allow for part of your journey towards your vision to be mastering the skills of resilience and getting back up again. And I think that's the last thing I wanted to say about that.
Great, thank you. I was just jotting down that what you said there, the art of getting back up again. That would be a great podcast title. So if there's anybody listening who would like that as a title, that would certainly be helpful for me. But yeah, great, lovely. And I very much agree that the difficult part is the keeping going. Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's episode. We both really hope that you found that useful and interesting. And if you are now moved to either go and work on your vision, to reflect on it, or to begin the visioning process, to start challenging yourself to step outside of that comfort zone and do that dangerous stuff of thinking about what you really want and where you really want to be going, then from both of us, just go for it. Just throw yourself into it. It's wonderful. It's really great work.
And also, I'd love to hear from listeners if they wanted to share some of their visions on the Facebook page or speak with us about that. Be very open to that. It's a really, really worthwhile thing to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. We would love to hear your visions. Yeah. And we're happy to share bits of ours as well. We're going to be back in a fortnight's time, as usual, with our next episode. Our topic for next time will be gratitude and appreciation. If you want to get in touch with us in the meantime, you can hop onto social media and go to the Big Yearning Facebook page or the Big Yearning Instagram account. If you want to get in touch with us personally, then Neil, how do people reach you?
Best way, Alexander, is through my website, which is www.coachingforlifefroome.co.uk. The contact details are there for email and for phone.
Great. And same with me. If you go to my website, which is deepcoaching.co.uk, then you'll see a form there to be able to get in touch with me or to book a consultation. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll look forward to joining you again in a fortnight's time. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. See you next time.